Welcome to Concussion Talk Podcast. I'm Nick Mercer. On episode 61 of Concussion Talk Podcast, I chat with HeadsupCAN founders Seth Mendelsohn and Ryan Sutton about their organization, Concussion Advocacy and Concussion Awareness. Concussion Talk Podcast is presented by HeadCheck Health. HeadCheck Health bridges the gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Track Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck Health to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. I'm on with Seth and Ryan from Heads Up, and I don't know which one of you wants to talk about what Heads Up is and who you're geared towards.
I guess I can start, and then Seth kind of will chime in. It's usually how it goes. So I'm Ryan Sutton. I'm the executive director of Heads Up Concussion Advocacy Network, and essentially we're a online platform that works towards spreading awareness on concussions. So we do it through social media, just spreading awareness and telling people stories on social media. And then we also have broken into some events and just unique areas that we find actually help spread concussion awareness.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm Seth Mendelsohn. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for HeadsupCAN. And for me, it was really important to create this empathetic approach for people who maybe have never had a concussion or understand how severe it is. And we started by just having these shirts and kind of just spreading the awareness through that way. And now we're just trying to, continue to share our story and our journey and other people's stories because, concussions are so individualistic and unique that we want to kind of show that this affects everyone differently. Right. Okay. Well, those who are listening to the podcast can't obviously see you guys, but Seth has on a Heads Up t-shirt and Ryan has on a Heads Up hat and looks good and look blue.
And sweater.
And sweater. And sweater. And sweater. So, that's all we wear.
Yeah, it's pretty much the only thing in our closet.
So what's in your let's actually first we'll go to just talk a bit about yourselves. So was our Ryan Bloom, and who are you and where did you get? Why are you interested in concussions?
Yeah, so I grew up and I've played hockey my whole life. I actually had my first concussion when I was 8 in a biking accident, and so I was introduced to it at a fairly young age. Definitely younger than a lot of the people I was surrounded by. So it was interesting to go through it at the age of 8 and see how everybody was kind of disconnected from what I was going through. I was actually, I was knocked out for roughly a half an hour for that one. It was a pretty severe accident, and I'm happy to have recovered from it at that young age. But it was definitely alarming. It alarmed my parents a lot for sure. And luckily I was wearing a helmet. But then as I progressed into my teens, I was playing hockey nearly 7 days a week and definitely was susceptible to more concussions because of my early concussion, obviously. And so I sustained 3 in my teenage years. And by the age of 19, I had to stop playing hockey altogether.
When did they start hitting in hockey when you were playing?
I was actually the last age group to never have any restrictions on that. So as soon as I was in Adam, we were hitting.
What age was that?
Around, I don't know for sure, but I believe it was 8-ish.
8? Okay.
Yeah, around the time I actually got that concussion. And then it was weird for me because I was the age group that every time you went up, like the people below us were not able to hit anymore. So when I went to Pee Wee, they moved hitting up to Pee Wee. So like I never missed
exactly the wrong time.
Exactly. That was that year. It was like a weird cut. So my brother had a completely different experience where he actually had hitting limited. And it was kind of funny because he actually is more of an aggressive player on the ice than I was. So he actually was yearning for having like hitting in hockey, and he hated seeing it.
You were telling him no, not good.
I was just like, well, I wasn't really someone who hit a lot on the
Yeah.
ice, but I could take it, obviously. But yeah, it was, he loved it. He dished out hits when he got his chance, put it that way.
And and Seth, how did you introduce two concussions, and basically, who are you?
Yeah, so I've been playing all different kinds of sports when I was growing up. Like every other Canadian, I played hockey. I was a goalie, but football was my biggest passion. I started when I was 12 years old, and I got good at it really quickly because I like to hit. I was this small, mighty defensive player that I felt like for me, where I lacked in size, gained an IQ. So I was really smart with how I played, and coaches really were drawn to that. And
You're like Rudy.
throughout, you like Rudy, that was my nickname actually. And so for me, throughout the years, when you get hit with in your head in football, your bell was rung. So I never really thought much about when I actually suffered concussions. Like I couldn't tell you how many I've had because not a lot of them didn't get diagnosed. But in my senior year in grade 12, it was a week before the season started, and I remember we had a new coach, and I tried to make this big play in practice to kind of earn my spot. And my head went right into one of my best friends, actually, who's like 6'6", 260 pounds, like much bigger than me.
Yeah.
Went right into his knee. And it was diagnosed as a mild concussion, which was a term that people would just kind of throw around back then when they didn't really know how to diagnose you. Yeah. And I ended up being out for about 4 weeks, missed half of my final year. And then a lot of mental health complications came from that, the remainder of my grade 12 year. And then, to be honest, after that, I never really thought much about my concussions until, I met Ryan and we started talking about our shared experiences and realized how alienating it was. And that's kind of what spurred this entire journey. And it was actually Ryan I believe it was your sixth you got in third year or second year, Ryan?
No, it was, that was my fourth actually. So that was my last hockey concussion. It was when I was 19, I believe. And that was actually outside of organized sport, like community sport, I guess. And it was just in a rec league.
Okay.
I was just cutting across the middle. I didn't even have the puck, and this guy just dropped me. And I was defenseless. I didn't even see him. So I had to get stitches in my chin. Yeah. I think I got 3 or 4 there. And it really disoriented me. And I pretty much, I still play hockey occasionally, but I make sure I know the environment that I'm going into when I play.
Yeah.
And I always have to have the appropriate safety equipment on, of course.
You play in non-contact leagues, or?
Yeah, non-contact for sure. Definitely won't get into contact again. It's just the risks are too high. But yeah, so after that concussion, that was when everything started to kind of happen. So, definitely realized in that one that it was a really alienating feeling above everything else. And I didn't really have an outlet where I felt comfortable going to, whether it be online or talking to my friends. It just felt like there wasn't an area that made me feel like everything that was going on was normal, per se.
There's no group at university or
community? No, nothing. It happened during the summer. So I was working, and there was a weird situation that went on at work where I had to obviously take time off, but the owner didn't necessarily agree with that. And I was managing a retail store, so she was trying to schedule me in. So there was a lot of stress with that because I tried to work, obviously, but I wasn't right, and it made my symptoms last longer. So then that kind of led me to understanding that there needs to be more knowledge and awareness about the injury, because if other people are going through that without even I had medium to mild symptoms, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Obviously they were tough to go through, but if people are having more severe symptoms and they're trying to do what I had to do while I was in my concussion and feel the way that they felt or feel the way that I felt, I honestly couldn't imagine it. So after Seth and I started talking, and then our one other buddy, Cam, he actually introduced us to the idea of starting up a brand that gives back to concussion awareness. And we just really took to it. And I would say from when the idea was planted, it took us about 8 months to a year to actually start implementing it.
Wow.
Yeah, so then...
So you just talk about how you guys met and why did you decide to go this route of starting an organization, nonprofit?
Yes, so we met at Brock University. We both are in the sport management program, and in our very first class, the very first seminar, we sat next to each other, and we were told to find a partner to do a project that you have to do that whole semester. And we kind of looked at each other like, oh, like, let's just, we're already sitting next to each other. Let's kind of do it from there. And it was kind of funny because from that point on, we did every project in university together and created this really quick bond and connection, and started to learn how we operated and what we brought to the table and how, you know, different our skill sets were and our passions, but how we could collaborate with that. So for about, that kind of was first year. Then we lived with each other for 3 years after that. And again, started to do all of these projects together. So when this idea came to start this brand that we were both really passionate about, because we had both experienced concussions, we both felt alienated and both felt like there wasn't that platform out there that really talked about the severity of it or made you feel comfortable with, you know, what you're going through. So it kind of all was an accumulative feeling and approach for this journey, and it's been an incredible run since then. And we would just start by, you know, having a table at Brock University and just talking to students, being like, hey, have you ever had a concussion? Just simple things like that. Like, do you know what a concussion is? And, you know, to our surprise, a lot of these university students didn't know what a concussion was, didn't know if they'd ever had one, didn't know the symptoms, didn't really know a whole lot about this injury, which was really scary. And then we found out, obviously, that 50% of Canadians, don't know what concussions are. So it made us even more motivated to see these university students, the future of, you know, our country, not understand this very real, very severe injury. And so we decided to take matters into our own hands.
Nice. Great. And so sorry, Justin, Dad,
right? So we basically started it in our fourth year, first month of our fourth year.
It's a 4-year program? So
our last year, it actually worked out that I had less classes that year because I did my internship in the summer. So I had a little more time to kind of dive into it, which was great. But we even started, we had an office set up in Seth's room. Like we really, like Seth had a big room at our schoolhouse. So we really took advantage of it and we went full force as soon as we could. So it was definitely an amazing experience and it was really enjoyable.
And
just
so
exciting.
How do you guys, you said you started off with just talking to people from a table at Brock in like the student center or whatever it was, but how did you guys get into meetings or groups, and like how do you approach people? How did you get started in this talking to people about your idea and about concussion awareness? How did you start off?
Well, it was exactly what Seth said. It was just going and having a table. That was the very first thing that we did, and we wanted to hit the ground running and essentially start like talking to people face to face, so we could actually get some understanding of how people felt about it. And then from there, whenever we learned that whenever you have a table, we should be trying to run some like social media contests to get more people engaged. So then we'd start running contests for free merchandise because we were also launching a brand at the same time. So it got the brand out there and it essentially just started to grow from there. We would get followers from that because part of our contest would be like follow, like, and tag 2 friends who should see this or know more or who have helped you throughout your concussion recovery. And then so from there, it just kind of started to grow. We actually saw a good amount of growth within our first 6 months from that exact model.
So
and the ball just kind of kept rolling too, right? And actually by the end of the year, we became the first student apparel business to be in the Brock campus store. We had this whole feature for the month of March, which was really exciting. So to see us starting from just a table, like a very basic table, to kind of at the end of the month being into the campus store around Brock was
that's just
Nice. It was pretty exciting. And we went to like the Niagara Ice Dogs and we had a table set up there. They play in the OHL and it was just we look for opportunities to get out there and talk to people face to face so we can be better informed on how we could kind of talk to people online.
And specific
so.
that how was the OHL? How receptive were the fans there, or the knowledgeable were the fans there, or whoever you talked to at the OHL Ice Dogs game?
We had some great conversations. I think wherever we've gone, people have been very inquisitive because, again, like this concussions are something that, you know, you really only see in like these big hockey or football hits on like TSN and Sportsnet, right? No one really talks about the people who slip and fall and get a brain injury, or, you know, the concussion that derived from a car accident. And I feel like there was a lot of people that would come up to us and kind of ask questions and want to hear our story. And I remember specifically when we were at the Ice Dogs game, I was talking to a few firefighters and how they have to go and help people who slip and fall and all the training that they have to go through. So I personally found, I can't speak for Ryan, but people have been very receptive to understanding and learning more. There just hasn't been someone, you know, like we believe HeadsupCAN is, that can really go be approachable and be out in the community, right? And that was a big thing for us.
That's where, like, every time we've had a setup anywhere, it's always, we are so amazed by what the people actually come up and talk to us about. Like that alienating feeling that essentially like propelled us to do this. You can see it in everybody, and that's why they feel so comfortable talking to us. They just hear our story because we obviously will tell them what we do immediately after meeting them. And then they will start to break into their concussion story, or how concussions have affected a family member and how it's like kind of trickled down into their life. And it's really powerful, honestly, to be a part of it and have people feel comfortable enough to share their stories with us.
And well, speaking of family members, do you guys have any, or just people in the lives, do you have anybody that was really helped you in your recovery? I guess well, Ryan knows exactly when your recovery was, but Seth, you don't really know it. You have people who were very supportive of you, obviously, but I mean of your concussion journey. Do you have any?
Yeah, I was very lucky. I am very lucky to have parents that cared way more about my health than my my athletic career. I also knew, like, after grade 12 that I was done with football. I had that approach going into the year. So for me, it was really important to get my recovery and my brain health back in check before I went back into the game, because I've been pretty well rehearsed. Like I understood a lot about concussions in grade 12, being in football for so many years and seeing other friends get injured, that I didn't want to put myself through that. Because, and something that I still stress is, you know, there's more to life than sports. And obviously trying to pursue that dream of playing sports is never something I would ever tell someone to not do, but understanding that at a certain point, you have to take care of yourself. And especially when it comes to the brain, you can't play around with that. Like that's the most complex organism that one injury to the head could change the rest of your life. So I was very fortunate enough to have my parents by my side. But it was definitely tough for me because I could be in school and still do my homework, my tests, and not feel the symptoms. But when I worked out or I tried to run, that's when I started getting headaches. So it was tough to kind of communicate that to my teammates and my friends. But yeah, I had a really good support. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and for me, like, my support system was great. My family definitely was understanding. And my mom specifically was just a rock star. Like, she really took it seriously, and like it made me want to take it more seriously too. And throughout my like amateur sports career, or whatever you want to call it, like she was always interested in our health and well-being and our schooling, opposed to like sports. She thought that sports came second to pretty much all of those things I just mentioned. And really that was essentially what made me want to take it seriously and gave me the education behind the injury to care about your head.
So actually,
go ahead. No, sorry.
I was just gonna say, just like looking at your website, HeadsupCAN website. You have, sorry, my hands over these mics on my side of my computer there. So anyway, you guys have advocates and apparel. So how did you get started with your and media? So advocates, apparel, and media. Are those your three main areas you focus on at HeadsupCAN? The
Uh,
advocate program.
yeah. So the apparel was like how we started.
Yeah.
Like we did start off as a brand first, and now recently we have moved into a nonprofit organization. So obviously
What
having a
was the
brand a
brand
part
called
of
for? Was the brand called for the brand? It's always called HeadsupCAN or.
it was no, it was
Yeah.
always called Heads Up. It was Heads Up in support of concussions was technically the brand.
Oh, okay.
But it's like we've always had the Heads Up Can handles, and it's always like we've turned it into Heads Up Concussion Advocacy Network essentially,
Oh, okay.
as the nonprofit rebranding. But yeah, it's always been something that we've wanted to do was create that network. But the apparel is just a great way for people to feel a part of our community. We find it really like people are excited to wear it. Pretty much everybody that we know who owns one of our hoodies or T-shirts wears it like every day almost. It's one of their favorite
Nice.
sweaters.
Nice.
But that has become like less prevalent as we've been more focused on spreading awareness, and that's kind of where the advocate program came in. That's actually something that we've like really started to push recently. It's something that we've definitely always wanted to do, but now we have the time and the capacity and the know-how to actually implement it the way we want. So basically, with that, we're just focused on telling other people's stories. So in the past, we have done concussion testimonials, as you may see on our website,
Yeah. Seen YouTube
or on.
videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have done those, and those were awesome. It was limited because we had to go and do a full production of how and like set up in a room and like actually interview people. But now we're trying to streamline that process by the creation of our advocate form, where people can essentially just answer two simple questions. How have concussions affected you? And why do you want to become an advocate for concussion awareness?
Right.
And it's crazy because through those two questions, you can get a wide range. Like just with any like concussion, everybody experiences it completely differently. And there's no one concussion that's the same to another. So everybody's going to have a different perspective on why they want to be an advocate for it, but why concussions have also affected their life. So we found it to be a pretty powerful tool and something that we are starting to launch more recently. And yeah, if Seth, you want to add anything to that, then.
Well, yeah, I also think there was a lot of times. I think for anyone who has a concussion, it's very tough to share your story because for a lot of people, it can be a very tough time, dark time in their life. Some people are still going through it. And I think when we went through, even when we were at Brock and just other people and like kind of gauging people's interest on, doing videos, the idea of being in front of a camera was kind of tough for them. And they didn't really necessarily want to share their story that way. But the way that we've been able to kind of, understand that because we were, again, people who would suffer concussions and know how scary that is to kind of tailor this entirely new form of advocates where people can kind of, like Ryan said, answer these two questions and still you get such a wide range of stories. And I think that's the biggest thing for us is it's always been about sharing people's stories. I think that for some reason is what gets lost in a lot of this concussion research is you don't hear the actual symptoms that people go through and people immediately correlate it to headaches, but what about the mental health complications that can derive because of that? And I think that's why this advocates program is so near and dear to our hearts because we know that there's so many people that have been affected some way or another by concussion. So to be able to create this program for people to share their stories has always been what we envision HeadsupCAN growing into.
That's great.
Yeah. And then it just gives us an avenue too to just like have people submit their stories. And now we're going to work towards sharing everybody's story that submits. So it's just creating a more full picture of just a shared experience for everybody and just allow people to resonate with different things. You may not resonate with everybody's story, but I'm sure you can resonate with at least a sentence.
Yes,
like at least some small thing that they're going through. You will have an understanding and be like, oh yeah, no, I totally get that. I've definitely felt something like that before. And it's just validating your feelings going through a concussion, right?
Totally. So, I don't want to put on the spot if you don't know numbers. Exact percentages, but how would you say most of your people that respond to your questions and are advocates for Heads Up Can? Would you say they're athletes, or would you say they're more just people who've had a concussion, either through sports or through just general car accidents or falling down or whatever? Would you say?
I think I would say that in terms of the advocates, because this is a very new program. So in terms of what we've been posting recently, it's been a lot of people relatively the same demographic as us in their early 20s who, whether they played sports throughout their childhood or had friends who suffered concussions, they wanted to share their experience with it. But when you go back to kind of when we started this and just some of the other people that we've been able to interact with, it's so wide ranging. Through our testimonials, you have people that were just playing a recreational basketball game and hit their head, or someone who suffered a really major car accident and the doctors looked at everything but her head. And then and that led to a lot more complications. And then, even more recently, we've had professional athletes like Daniel Carcillo join as an advocate, and Andrew Coe has represented what our mission is, and he's with the Canadian rugby team. So you really start to see so many different people understand, at the very least, the importance of spreading awareness, and it's been truly remarkable.
Right. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
It's just I think that it's probably 50-50. Like, we definitely do talk to a lot of athletes, and we do have a sport management background naturally. But like we went into this with the intention of helping athletes in 2017. And then as soon as you begin to actually get on the ground and talk to people, you quickly realize that it really doesn't have a lot to do with athletes. It's the regular people that we want to talk to as well. So just having a nice mix between the two is something that's been important to us. And just sharing every story possible is just how we see about doing that.
And to add to that, like 70% of concussions aren't even sport related. And I think that was the first thing that I learned through this journey that made me realize how naive I was for so many years. Because like I had mentioned earlier, we only, think of concussions when we think of these big hits in sports. But there's this whole other world of people that are suffering daily, whether they slip and fall, whether it's, very, very like accidental incidences. And it's those people that, they don't have trainers or they don't have people around them that understand concussions. So they just go about their day and they're just like, oh, I have a headache. Let me pop some aspirin and maybe that will help. But in reality, they have a head injury that needs to be looked at and trying to help those people understand that if they are suffering any of these symptoms, because they're wide ranging, that they need to get it checked out.
Right. Yeah. So do you find the best way to do that is through your advocate? Like, you just not the best way. Yes, the best way is through as much advocates who can speak to as many people as possible. But do you like your media, your YouTube videos and your other media operations as a grand word for it, but that the media aspect of it, or social media and their video on YouTube, or do you find just going and talk to people like in groups or individually? Do you find which one do you find both equally?
We definitely like a good mix. We obviously are pretty we are fairly present online, and we think that's very important to spreading awareness. But the way that you really connect with people is seeing them face to face and looking them in the eye and having these conversations. So at any chance we get, we would love to be in the field and talking with people. But we also recognize, especially in times like these, that's not really possible.
No, yeah.
Or even just in general, like it's not possible to be connecting with everybody in public every day.
Right.
So that's where we think that online we can really get to people and we can share a unique perspective that can make them feel comfortable. And that's really our angle for sure. We love connecting with people.
Good.
Love it.
Good. And so your apparel, still can find your apparel online on your website. And what kind of apparel can they find there? And where do the revenues go?
So we have T-shirts, hoodies, and we actually have track pants as well, and and hats. Yeah, and that's really all we have right now. We are going to be looking into. Yeah, I know. Yeah. We're going to be looking into exploring more options and bringing more options to everybody, and maybe even exploring some new logos and some new some branding that we can explore upon, and even building on the advocate program as well with some apparel. It's a long process right now, and people aren't necessarily buying things in times like these, but we're definitely ready to explore more in that area. But we have a wide range of colors with everything. We just want to make people feel a part of the network with our apparel, and that's the main goal.
Yeah, and I think to kind of build off of that, it's also what I found is I'd be walking, in the streets of Toronto wearing my hoodie or Niagara, and people kind of see this big heads up and the word concussions, and it immediately starts a conversation. And that's what this entire journey has been about, is to start that conversation about concussion.
Yeah.
Because whether we, it's the invisible injury. So many people suffer in silence, but when they see that, they feel like they're a part of that and they want to know more about it. So the amount of, people that I've seen just on the street, or I even remember I used to work at Good Life Fitness and I saw a member walk in and was wearing the hoodie that I'd never met before. And so it was really cool to see all these different, people gravitate to, the concept of our apparel. And we actually also donate 15% to concussion research and trying to make it so that it's not, just a brand. It's actually for a good cause. And we're trying to give back, because that's been a huge mission of ours. Is, like we said, we're sport management graduates. We don't have any backgrounds in science. We can't tell you that much about, the actual neuroscience that is involved with concussions and all, what the right steps are. But what we can do and what we're trying to do is create a voice for people who otherwise don't know how to express what they're feeling. And we also do that. I mean, we have blogs, we have people like content writers that have joined our team that have shared their stories through blogs, and just in any type of outlet, whether it's videos, blogs, social media, or connecting with people in person, or doing podcasts like these. The more that we can talk about it, the more that we can challenge the stigma, and that's what we're really striving to do.
Excellent. Yeah. So it takes a village, as they say. So what's next for Seth and Ryan, and also in HeadsupCAN? So which
definitely, we definitely are going to be building upon our advocate campaign right now. We actually just launched it on Monday. So we're really. Yeah, so it's really new for us. We already have.
Didn't know how new it was too.
Yeah, no. We're really excited about it, and we think that especially in times like these, we think that it's just going to help spur more conversation. And like we've said, that's all we really strive to do, and challenge the stigma on the concussions. But then we're also involved with in an organization called PACA, Peterborough Athletics Concussion Awareness Committee. And so what we do with them is just help explore concussion awareness in Peterborough region specifically. And that's a board that comprises of like the school boards, the public health sector, and pretty much all the large organizations within the community just coming together. So just being a part of things like that. And actually, we're even in talks right now with some provincial sport organizations to become their concussion awareness arm or somehow partner with them to help spread concussion awareness. That's so good. Going to all of their like sporting tournaments and having a booth set up there where their athletes can go and talk to, and having it extremely interactive and engaging, and finding unique ways to connect with people kind of in person, but also on a mass scale as much as we can, at least.
And then, to kind of build on to that, Ryan actually had mentioned earlier, we officially became a nonprofit organization. So kind of converting, we always kind of treated Heads Up as if it was a nonprofit, but now that it's official, now that we've kind of gone through the entire registration process, and we have board of directors. We've got Stephanie Cowell from Parachute Canada, Alex Salome from the Canadian Mental Health Association, and Pina Petrielli, who helped with our accounting and all of that. So we created a really cool support system for trying to do and to help, guide us and ensure that we're still, hitting a lot of different areas, whether it's mental health, policy framework, because there's so much that needs to be done. Like you had mentioned, Nick, it takes a village, right? And a big thing for us too is, we've been people who've been on the ground. So where a lot of other organizations kind of haven't been, really dealing with people directly in the same way that we have. I feel like that's created a whole, perspective of how we understand concussions and how it affects people, and trying to, like kind of Ryan said, take that and what we've learned there and go to these provincial sport organizations and kind of explain what we've learned, and just being a part of a lot of different events as well. And obviously right now with the times, events aren't really much of a thing to look into right now, but that's something where we see Heads Up going forward, is creating more events that not only talk about the severity of concussions, but also highlight the positives of the recovery and how, you can actually heal yourself and be better for it. So trying to kind of take that approach rather than just continuously harping on, the negative effects of concussions as well.
Yeah. And
we also, sorry, we just have one other thing that
go ahead, please.
We just haven't even really touched upon it though, but we are going to be looking into creating our own conferences, our own concussion conferences. We find that, like, when we go to concussion conferences, we absolutely love it because we get to interact with everybody, but we just want to have our own take on what our concussion conference can look like. So maybe just changing traditional norms where how it's just speakers just talking to people, and make it more interactive where it can be more of a conversation opposed to a speech, and just having unique
more
ways
like a symposium kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just more like driven towards conversations, and maybe even having multiple like talks going on at once, and having it in smaller groups where people can essentially just have real conversations, and then having some sort of interactive element at the end that just brings everybody together as a group, maybe like a concert or like something like yoga. Just something completely different that we just our own spin on a conference.
Yes, I'm thinking of yoga, and like I talked to keep your head up, KW. So keep your head up in Kitchener or Waterloo, and there's another yoga thing. There's another concussion group. So Ontario has a bunch of concussion groups starting out now, but as you mentioned, unfortunately, these times it's not to get together. It's not really possible. So, but you guys have a big social media presence, and an online presence. So, and this is right now it's a great place to meet. So, how can people find Heads Up Can on all social media and online?
So all of our tags are at Heads Up Can. Our website is headsupcan.ca. And on our website, you can learn a lot about, concussions, about our story. And we constantly are promoting, our advocates. You can become an advocate. If you go to our awareness tab, it's right there. We have, like I mentioned, there's a bunch of blogs out there. And then Instagram, we're the most active. So we constantly are trying to make videos to kind of, again, challenge that stigma surrounding concussions. And we're pretty big on Twitter as well. LinkedIn, Facebook, you can kind of find us on all platforms, as well as TikTok.
So, never used TikTok.
It's crazy.
I'm too old for
it. It definitely helps start the communication and that conversation with the younger demographic, which is something that I personally, and I know Ryan was say,
oh, we lost you there for a second, or did we totally lose you?
Awareness is going is to make sure our next generation really understands the severity. Did we just lose Ryan?
I lost you for a second, but I think we're all back now.
Yeah.
So you're saying TikTok is great because
it's a primarily younger demographic. So to start instilling the awareness on concussions at a younger age is something that we find is really important. I've actually spoke in front of hockey camps, and I've spoken in front of students to share our story, to share our journey, in the effort to educate them and empower them to learn more. And it's something that ideally, when this whole thing that the world is going through right now is over, we can kind of get back on, because I think having those presentations with those kids, and obviously right now using through TikTok, but getting that next generation to fully understand that when they hit their head, they need to take the time off, and that it's okay to not be okay, is really, really important.
Well, I'm great. Did you just want to before I say, thanks a lot and all that stuff, I just also say goodbye, thanks and all that stuff, but I will talk after I start recording. But also, do you just want to just plug your advocacy network again, just because as you said, it just started on Monday, and maybe this has not been the best time to get your news out there. So Monday being March 30th. So this podcast will go out probably April 14th. So it was 2 weeks, 2 weeks prior. But yeah, but just want to mention your advocacy network again. Where can people sign up for that?
So actually right now, and probably for the next while, we're going to maintain the advocate link on our HeadsupCAN Instagram bio. Okay. So it's just HeadsupCAN.ca/advocates. So it's really simple to find. You can pretty much just type in the URL as I just said it, and it'll direct you right to the page. It'll give you a brief summary of what we see our advocate program being. And then we also have some school advocate programs that we'll briefly touch upon in that page. And then you scroll down to the bottom, and there's an advocate form where you can just fill out the 2 questions, and then we get an email right away, and we just respond as we can.
Perfect, great. So that's for anybody, any age, any like if they're going to school or they're just they're just walking the street.
It's for anybody. So anybody.
There's no limitations. Yeah.
Anybody who feels compelled to share their story and share it on our platform, we'd love to have anybody, like literally anybody, share. So we do have like kind of something that says, "What school do you attend?" But that's not that's an optional question. You don't have to answer that if you don't go to school. It's more just so we can get a better understanding if you do happen to go to school. So,
well, great. This is great, and I encourage anybody to go to your website and maybe in these times you want to just need a new. I know here, I don't want a new hoodie right now. Well, you probably would here, but like you mostly kind of maybe a T-shirt or a. I saw you were sold out in hats, so.
Yeah, we're going to be working
about
on
the last hat. Did you?
New hat. Yeah, pretty much.
Stocked up before.
Yeah, launching some in the spring for sure. I guess it is technically spring now, but we'll get some soon. Maybe by the time this podcast launches, maybe not.
Thanks a lot,
Gonna be working really hard on that.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and please stay in touch if you want. That'd be awesome.
As you heard, Ryan and Seth are very active, and HeadsupCAN, for that matter, is very active on social media, so please check out their social media accounts and visit their HeadsupCAN webpage, and visit my webpage at concussiontalk.com and my social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound, www.bensound.com.